Chelsea forward Christopher Nkunku is a potential target for Manchester United in this window. And Aston Villa joined the list of Premier League clubs looking at Wolves forward Matheus Cunha. Yeah, good evening. Welcome along to the transfer show. 10 days to go in this transfer window. Tonight, we're joined by Michael Bridge and sports agent Sky Andrew. Welcome along. Coming up on the show, we hear from a host of Premier League managers, including a defiant Mikel Arteta.
Have I ever said no to a striker?
He's a potential future for many years.
We're seeing players that we've identified and liked and targeted move to other clubs.
We lost two very, very important players.
So I love the transfer window.
January market was really tough.
With sport director, we pay attention if something can happen.
Probably you will not have your perfect scenario, the perfect player.
I was feeling something.
How do you say that?
I don't know. I really don't know.
I understand the question.
I don't understand the question.
This is a question for the club.
If you're looking for a hit on a stick, take mine.
Last Friday I was more confident.
No, it's about looking ahead.
We lack goals, we lack people, we lack options in the front line. It's clear.
Welcome to the Premier League.
Welcome to the Premier League indeed. Sky, Michael, welcome along to the two of you. Michael, let's just start with Manchester United and interesting developments tonight on a Chelsea player.
Yeah, interesting indeed. This broke around 6 o'clock this evening, the last hour. Chelsea forward Christopher Nkunku is a potential target for Manchester United in this window. Now, talks are understood to have been held between intermediaries about a move. Now, they don't want to sell Nkunku, but it is thought they would be tempted to do business for £70 million. Now, he's a player United are considering, but unlikely to meet that £70 million figure. We know Bayern Munich are interested, but that's a development tonight. Interest from Manchester United.
Sky, it's clear that Chelsea are looking to trim their squad, some would say yet again. From an agent's perspective, how does it work? Is that driven by the club, and what form does that take?
Well, first and foremost, if a player's not playing, then the player's not happy and the agent's not happy. But from Chelsea's perspective, if they are going to trim their squad, they're going to be on the phone to agents saying, look, you need to get your player out. Or sometimes a coach will have a conversation with a player and say, you're not in my plans. And that's normally a trigger to get the player to go to his agent and say, look, you know, you got to get me out of here. But the January window is notoriously difficult. So they've got a short period of time. But you would expect that Chelsea would have been having conversations with agents and players, and the coach would have maybe had a conversation with a player well before the January transfer window, so that they're prepared to get going within these 4 weeks.
Is it a case that all of these agents are being called by the club individually, saying, listen, we've got player A, B, C, D and E, and we need them out of the club. What clubs can you bring to the table?
No, but it comes in different forms. Part of it may be the club saying, we need to balance the books, and so these players need to go. But it's normally not, you know, going to a player and just saying, we don't want you. It's the coach saying, you're not in our plans. It's the club maybe telling the coach that if you want to bring someone in, you've got to get players out. But the catalyst is normally, if a coach says you're not in my plans, it's very difficult for the player to stay there. And the hierarchy, the big decision makers, they normally don't tell the players. They're telling the agents or they're telling the coach. And then the agents are under massive pressure. I mean, agents can lose clients if they don't get them out, if they're not playing. But Chelsea pay very well. You know, they're a very financially strong club. So, you know, playing for Chelsea, big club, a lot of players don't want to leave. But if they need to be relevant, they need to go and play somewhere.
Just sticking with Chelsea, of course, there's a lot of a link between Manchester United and Chelsea with Alejandro Garnacho just now. The interest is there, no official offer. Napoli also interested in Alejandro Garnacho. They've had a bid rejected. There's a gap in valuation. They've yet to come back in. Sky Italy are now reporting that United may have reduced their valuation for Garnacho, but Napoli now also looking at the Borussia Dortmund forward, Karim Adeyemi. And amidst all of that, Garnacho is starting games for Manchester United, as he did, some will say very impressively, against Rangers in the Europa League last night. But Sky, I want to take you to another big issue at Manchester United. His name, of course, is Marcus Rashford. From what you've seen, I know you're looking at it from the outside, how has this been handled by Rashford and his camp? First off, particularly to do with that interview that was probably done without United's permission, saying, I need a new challenge. I need the next steps in my career.
It's interesting because there's a lot of game playing in football. You know, what the fans see and hear normally isn't what's going on. No one really knows what's going on with Marcus behind the scenes. But the fact is that he was being honest when he did that interview. And honesty isn't normally taken with gratitude. You know, a lot of people think, well, why did you say that? That was how he felt. And behind the scenes, there's obviously been a disconnect. But people seem to forget, you know, that what he's done in society, how good a footballer he is. But what people are seeing now is a disconnect between the player and the club. And there's lots of different narratives being put out there. But let's remember, he's still a young man. He's proved he can play at the highest level. It's just that in his eyes, some players, like Marcus, will just be honest about the situation. Now, if he'd not been honest and said, I'm going to stay here, I want to be here, and all this kind of stuff, people would have just accepted it.
But what I would say is this interview was done well before the transfer window opened.
Yeah.
So once that interview was done, the general consensus was there must be a club that's ready to take Marcus Rashford. We're on day 24 of this transfer window. Has Marcus Rashford and his camp maybe overestimated the market for him?
Well, let's say that he was planning to leave, right? Him and his representatives would have planned to have a club in place, etc., etc. What this shows is that he didn't plan to say this. He was having an interview and he said something, but it was honest. He was being honest about how he felt. So now we're in a situation where he has said what he wants to do, and now it's in his hands to do what he wants to do.
Sky, let's go to the club then, his current club. How have Manchester United handled this then, do you think?
I mean, it's interesting. Manchester United are one of the biggest clubs in the world. And my view is that when you've got the revenue that Manchester United have got, right, they have got the power to do anything they want to do. They can hire the best people, they can hire the best recruitment, and then when they're dealing with players, they've got to have the best possible person to deal with the situation. It's all about sitting people in the right chairs. No matter how much money you've got to have the right people doing the right things, because if you don't, those people are just getting in the way. This situation is a massive thing, because he signed a long-term contract, he's on big money, he's a big star, and from Manchester United's point of view, the way they've got to handle it is to make sure that there is a good resolution, that it comes out best for them from their point of view. And what's best for them? Once there's an issue with a player, the longer the player stays at the club, the more of an issue it becomes.
So, look, the good resolution for United, it seems, would be for Marcus Rashford to go on loan to a club in Europe, right? We're running out of time now, though, and there's every chance that Marcus Rashford will remain at Manchester United. Now, given everything that's happened, given the finances involved, if you are in Marcus Rashford's ear, if you're in his camp, come 11 p.m. on February the 3rd, if he's still a Manchester United player, what's your advice to him then?
No, there's going to be people in for him. He's a fantastic player. What's happened is a coach has come in and just taken him out of the squad. And no player of his level can just sit on the bench forever. It would massively surprise me if there isn't something happening, and something will happen before the end of the window. But if he stays at Manchester United, it's not a bad second option. You know, if a player is playing for their hometown club, and it's a massive club. He'll have to put his head down, speak to the coach and get back in the team.
So it seems all options at the moment for Marcus Rashford remain on the table. He could go, he could stay. One option that looks like it is going to happen for Anthony is a move away from Manchester United for the rest of the season, because United have given Anthony permission to fly to Seville for a medical with Real Betis. It's a straight loan. Betis will pay at least 84% of Anthony's wages plus bonuses. Now, this is interesting, Sky, because depending on individual and team performance, United could end up making a profit on Anthony's wages, rather like they did with Jadon Sancho last January, because they've got this incremental percentage that would come down the better the player performs. So definitely one to watch once that deal does go through. But Michael, I just want to come to you, because we're talking a lot at the moment about Manchester United departures. What about incomings and the latest on Patrick Dorgu?
Well, it's clear that United's prime target, I mean, we're talking about forwards with a lot of clubs, but Ruben Amorim, the way he plays, he wants a left wing back. And Manchester United fans asking us all the time, they're asking you a lot of the time, does outgoings hinge on any pursuit of incomings? No, it does not hinge on any outgoings in this transfer window. They want a left wing back, and it's Patrick Dorgu they want, but there is this gap still in valuation, isn't there? Lecce wanting a package, was it closer nearly to £38 million? Do you see some maybe kind of leeway there?
I mean, that's what Manchester United will hope to do. They are discussing with Lecce to bring that price down, to get a compromise, to get Patrick Dorgu in at Old Trafford, and I guess start this rebuild for Ruben Amorim, Sky. Just put into words how big this rebuild looks like at the minute.
You know, the risk clubs get when they put players on big money that are unproven in the Premier League is that you end up having to pay 84% of the players' wages to go to a club.
Let me just stop you there. Real Betis will actually pay 84%.
Oh, yeah, 84%. Yeah. OK.
So they may have got a good deal on that one.
OK. If it's Real Betis paying 84%, yes, that is a phenomenal deal, honestly, because obviously he's a player...
We shouldn't forget that he cost Manchester United 86 million.
He cost 86 million. Yeah. Amorim's gone in there, right? You can imagine that normally if you go into a massive club, you make one or two tweaks. But he's gone in there and he's literally gone, I need all of these players out and I want certain players in. I think that he's still looking at Gyökeres at Sporting Lisbon. I think he wants to bring him in because he's a forward he's worked with and he knows what he can do. But the notorious problem of, see, fans, if fans know what's going on and fans could see what they'd do, it's not rocket science. Everything that's happening is what most fans would do. A lot of the fans are saying, right, Anthony needs to go, so they've got him out on loan, and they've managed to do a deal. Whoever did the Anthony deal deserves a medal, because it's a great deal. Because the amount of money he must be on 10 million plus. They've paid 80 million for him, which would have been spread over his contract. So when you add his wages and the transfer that they're paying for him, well...
I'm thinking of the medal ceremony now, Sky, because I'm looking at Manchester United, and in the summer, Omar Barada came in from Manchester City, so new CEO. Dan Ashworth came in, took him ages with gardening leave, great garden, he can do his garden again because he's left Man United already. Yeah. Jason Wilcox came in, so many changes at the top. The only person who stayed was Erik ten Hag, and now we finally got the new head coach. Totally different people at the top, but still the same difficult problems. And obviously one of the big problems for them was getting the players out that Ruben Amorim didn't want. And of course now they've got this issue with Marcus Rashford. But people forget there's been so many changes at Manchester United from the summer.
If you've got the money, for me there's no excuse, right? If you've got the income and you've got the financial power, you have to get the best recruitment people. You have to listen to the opinions of the right people. Recruitment is all about who is making the decisions and who is deciding. Who's got the track record, you hire that person. Because what we've got at Man United is people, even legends, talking about what's going on with the recruitment. And then what they've done so far is that they've shown the fans that there needs to be a rebuild. It's not, and in football sometimes, clubs don't actually say we're going to do a rebuild, they just get players out. But it's absolutely fascinating what's going on at Manchester United because they've got the money, And so really they should be at the top of the game because they've got the power to get the best people across the board.
Let's see how January develops, because it's clear that Manchester United will want to offload some players. Sky, Michael, don't go anywhere, because we've got plenty more to talk about, including Arsenal. And Mikel Arteta, the manager, is defiant in his need for a striker. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Transfer Show. Let's talk Arsenal now. Mikel Arteta is adamant he wants to sign a forward this month, and that Arsenal are actively pursuing a deal. There's been an increasing clamour from the fans for the club to go and bring in an attacker, and Arteta pushed back at the notion that isn't a priority for him.
Obviously, there's so much noise outside the club. Arsenal need to sign a forward, Arsenal need to sign a forward. And I know we sound like broken records when we ask you about that, but you clearly don't share that same sentiment. Do you think it is essential that you sign a forward, or would you be very happy with...
Sorry, I don't share what?
The same sentiment that you have to sign a forward this month? Or do you?
Have I ever said no to a striker?
No, but you don't feel it's a necessity, do you?
How do you say that?
You do feel it's a necessity?
I don't understand the question.
Okay. I'm saying so many people outside the club seem to think that Arsenal have to sign a forward this month.
So what is my opinion?
Yes.
That's what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay, my opinion is clear. We lost two very, very important players, Bukayo Saka and Gabi Jesus. So we lack goals, we lack people, we lack options in the front line. It's clear.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you think it's essential that you have to bring in forward then?
If we can get the right player, that's what we are actively looking at it. Yeah. Any player, no. Someone that makes us better and has an impact in the team. It's clearly that for the period that we lost them, ideally, we need some help because we were very short already and we're even shorter.
And is there work going on at the moment to bring? Have you identified targets?
Yeah.
Clearly, Mikel Arteta does want to bring in a striker. They're working in these final days to try and make that happen. Benjamin Sesko is a long-term target, but Leipzig say not for sale, got a deal until 2029. They've also looked at Matheus Cunha as well. Again, Wolves under no pressure to sell, contract until 2027. Sky, just generally, how difficult a position are Arsenal in when they're trying to go in to the market for a striker this late in the window when everybody knows they're in the market to bring someone in?
Yeah, it's tough. It's all about demand and supply. Everybody wants the same players. Arsenal want someone who can make them better. And how many players out there can make Arsenal better? And then when Arsenal go in for a player, everybody knows that Arsenal need a striker. So the price goes up. And the money people at Arsenal know that they're going to have to pay over the odds to get the players they want. So, yes, Arsenal are in a difficult position because they're such a great club with great tradition and a team that is just on the brink of winning the Premier League. So he's not saying too much because he knows that everybody can sing till they're blue in the face about, you need a forward. He wants to bring in another forward. They've got problems with Saka, and then Jesus has gone as well. So they want to bring in players that other clubs don't want to sell. So if those clubs are going to sell, they're going to have to ask for a load of money to be without, because you can't replace players in the January window.
Especially this late as well.
They let a player go and then they've got their own league to deal with. So, yeah, it's a very tricky situation. They need people behind the scenes that have got really strong networks and good communication skills. You see, I feel that the January window is so short that player swaps and that should come into place. There are players that Arsenal would maybe let go, do a part swap, part deal, but clubs don't want to do it. Every club is going to overprice their players.
But every player's got a price, right?
Every player's got a price, but Arsenal are not going to pay a silly price for a player. The team is decent as it is. He likes Havertz. Havertz is there. You know, he's got some good young players coming through as well. But people always forget that clubs like Arsenal, they've got such an unbelievable crop of players coming through. He's got an eye on them as well. So he doesn't want to block their pathway. So it's a really tricky situation. But if they get someone in, it will be a miracle job and it will be another medal.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of answered it in a way. So, but do agents and clubs then become a bit more opportunistic?
Oh, God, yes. Yeah. I mean, Jesus Christ. There'll be some agents lining their pockets, you know. Because at the end of the day, football is big business. And as I said earlier about demand and supply, there are very few players that all the top clubs want. If a player's got one club interested, you know, that's a lot. But if you've got 2, 3 clubs interested, the agents, they then start making their demands bigger. The players think, well, if I'm going to go, then you're going to have to pay me this. So, as you said earlier, very tricky situation for Arsenal.
Michael, look, Arsenal under Arteta in the 5 years, just over 5 years he's been there, they've signed over 30 players during his time there, only 2 strikers. 4 strikers have left the club under Mikel Arteta. Is there an argument that Arsenal maybe have neglected that position in some sort of form?
I am currently doing Mikel Arteta's eyebrows, like he did earlier in the press conference to that. Because you could argue, and Mikel Arteta will argue, that they've actually recruited ever so well in every other department. They've upgraded the goalkeepers. They've gone now to David Raya. Heavily upgraded the defence from when he started. Jurriën Timber, Benjamin White, Gabriel. Declan Rice weren't cheap, but hey, what an upgrade. They scored a lot of goals last season. And Mikel Arteta said to me and a few other reporters last season in a press conference, we're talking about the title race, he was just about to walk out and he stopped and said, oh, by the way, none of you said congratulations to me. I said, I didn't know it was your birthday. And he went, no, we've just qualified for the Champions League twice in a row. I was like, you know what? He's right. They were 8th, 7th, 8th when he was there. And all of a sudden, second. So you look at it last season as well. How many goals did they score last season in the 90s?
91.
They scored some goals. Yeah. They scored some goals. And look, you've heard it from him there. They want a striker.
But what people forget is that there are so few strikers available that will make Arsenal better that that's why it's difficult. When people say to him, you've got to get a striker, but don't you think that him and the recruitment team are looking at forwards that will make them better? And the fact is that there are so few, and demand and supply, as I keep saying, so everybody's after the same players, and Arsenal are not a club to put themselves in financial difficulty just to get a player. You know, they've got a squad of 25 players or whatever, and they're all good. They're all decent players.
Just a couple of other lines to bring you on Arsenal. It's not just about trying to bring in a forward, potential departures as well. We've been talking about Kieran Tierney throughout this transfer window, and we expect now Celtic to perhaps approach Arsenal to try and bring him on loan before a free transfer in the summer. And lots of talk about Alexander Zinchenko as well. Atletico Madrid keen on Zinchenko. That's according to our colleagues at Sky in Germany. They're open to signing Zinchenko in a permanent deal or on loan with an obligation to buy. Borussia Dortmund also explored that deal, but have concerns about the potential cost. They've yet to receive a formal approach as yet for Zinchenko of Arsenal, but crucially, he's entered the final 18 months of his contract, and it's understood Arsenal will look at suitable offers if they do come in. That's always the time that clubs will tend to look, 2 years to 18 months. They don't want to get any further below that time frame. But look, we mentioned Matheus Cunha earlier on as a player that Arsenal have considered. But the message from Cunha's current manager, Vitor Pereira, is straight and simple. He's not for...
He knows what I want from him as a captain. We had a conversation and everything is solved. He's ready for the game, committed with us and ready to help the team.
He's also been linked to a few other clubs. Arsenal and Nottingham Forest have their eye on him. Have there been any offers or bids for him at all?
I don't know. This is a question for the club. You know, he's my player. I think he's not for sale. This is the information from the club. and he's committed with us.
How much do you want him to stay at the club?
It's important, very important for us.
Yeah, so Vitor Pereira adamant that Matheus Cunha is not for sale. Just a quick couple of lines to bring you concerning Manchester City. We know they've been massive spenders in this January transfer window. We saw last January where there was hardly any business going on, and they've actually spent more money in this transfer window than the entire Premier League did in last January's transfer window. Omar Mamouche, of course, has joined. Abdul Kadir Kushanov has joined. And Vitor Haish has joined. But there's a bit of breaking news now, and it's one we have been expecting. And it is news of a departure. And that is Kyle Walker has left Manchester City as we expected him to do. These were pictures from yesterday when he arrived in Milan ahead of signing a loan deal with AC Milan from Manchester City. That loan deal comes with an option to buy at the end of the season. He has won the lot with Manchester City. He was their club captain this season as well. But now he has moved to pastures new. And he always wanted to try his hand abroad, didn't he? Remember, 18 months ago, he was close to moving to Bayern Munich. Well, he has chosen AC Milan this time. And a little addition to this move for Kyle Walker to AC Milan, it effectively means, as if we didn't know already, that Marcus Rashford will not be making that move to AC Milan, because remember, AC Milan can sign one non-EU player from either UK or Albania. At the start of this transfer window, it looked like the focus was on Marcus Rashford, and they had Kyle Walker in the background. The finances simply were not working with regard to Marcus Rashford, so they went for Walker, and it is now confirmed. Kyle Walker has joined AC Milan from Manchester City on loan until the end of the season with an option to buy. Sky, Michael, don't go anywhere. Still plenty to come. And coming up after the break, we will be going through every single Premier League club, news from all of them in our Premier League wrap. Stay with us. Yeah, welcome back to the Transfer Show.
Time now to go around the clubs.
Certainly is. Mikel Arteta is adamant he wants to sign a forward this month. Arsenal actively pursuing a deal.
Aston Villa are one of the clubs interested in Wolves forward Matheus Cunha. Villa would need to sell a forward before making a move for another attacking player.
Yeah, Bournemouth head coach Andoni Iraola says the club are still working to bring in a new striker.
Defender Michael Coyote has joined Brentford on loan from Fiorentina. The deal includes an option to make the move permanent in the summer for £13.5 million.
Brighton boss Fabian Hürzeler says he may need to dip into the transfer market to bolster his defence.
Well, Chelsea are considering a move for Manchester United's Alejandro Garnacho before the window closes.
Oliver Glasner is confident Tyrick Mitchell will stay at Crystal Palace in this transfer window. The defender's contract expires this summer.
David Moyes is weighing up whether Everton need to bring in a forward with Premier League experience or one from abroad.
Fulham manager Marco Silva expects to be quiet before the window closes.
Ipswich forward Ali Al-Hamadi has completed a medical at Stoke ahead of joining on loan for the rest of the season.
Ruud van Nistelrooy insists Leicester are working to bring in new additions, but admits signings alone won't solve all their problems in the relegation fight.
Leaders Liverpool head coach Arne Slot says Harvey Elliott must keep performing to increase his minutes, while the winger's been linked with a loan move in January.
Kyle Walker, as we've been explaining, has completed his move to AC Milan on loan from Manchester City.
Chelsea forward Christopher Nkunku is a potential Manchester United target this window.
MLS club Atlanta are closing in on a deal to sign Newcastle winger Miguel Almiron. The deal would cost an initial £8 million plus £3 million in add-ons.
Nuno Espirito Santo wouldn't be drawn on speculation linking Nottingham Forest to Matheus Cunha today. His side have had a bid for Johan Wissa rejected by Brentford.
Southampton boss Ivan Juric says he expects Tyler Dibling to still be with the club when the transfer window closes. They value the 18-year-old winger at £55 million and they don't want to sell.
Ange Postecoglou says there's a chance Tottenham do not make any further signings in this transfer window. They're in the market for a forward.
Yeah, West Ham United are in advanced talks with RB Leipzig over the signing of striker Andre Silva. There's also an interest in Ajax's Brian Brobbey.
Wolves are adamant forward Matheus Cunha is not for sale in this window. A number of clubs, as we told you earlier, are interested.
More now on what we mentioned before on Tottenham. They're in the market for a striker, and that became even more pressing after Dominic Solanke was ruled out for 6 weeks with a knee injury.
It depends on the player. It depends on sort of how they fit into what we do. It's not just about bringing in another body, but yeah, there's still no doubt we need to help these players, because like I said, we've still got some significant games, in the next sort of 2-3 weeks before we get players back. Nothing's changed in the last 24 hours. We've known that for
a bit worse.
But well, I mean, we kind of knew sort of with Dom probably a few days back. I've obviously had a press conference in the meantime, so all these things are known. So nothing changed, the last 24 hours that changes that part of it.
Right, Michael, that's Ange on Tottenham's pursuit of a striker. Will they get one in?
You support Spurs?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do think they'll get one in. There's been talk today of interest in Brian Broby. I think that might have been potentially. There's also talk of maybe the current club, Ajax, might have offered him to Spurs, but my understanding is that's not the player Spurs are targeting at this moment in time.
Right.
I do think they'll bring him forward in, yes.
OK. We'll be back in just a moment, but just a reminder of what's happening with Kyle Walker. Just a reminder that he has made that move from Manchester City to AC Milan. AC Milan have released a statement. They're saying they're pleased to announce the loan signing of Kyle Andrew Walker, gave all 3 names, from Manchester City with an option to buy. And he will wear shirt number 32. And my producer, Simon, reliably informs me, because he is a massive David Beckham fan, that David Beckham actually wore shirt number 32 when he was at AC Milan. If that's incorrect, I will give you his email later. Now, Kyle Walker has actually posted on Instagram a message to the Manchester City fans. Manchester City, where do I start? Signing for this incredible club in 2017 was a dream come true. 7 years later, winning 17 trophies, including the Champions League and the famous treble, is something I could only have dreamt of as a child. He carries on and then thanks the fans and his family. He says, most importantly to the fans, thank you for embracing me as one of your own from day one. Your unwavering support, week in, week out, home and away, will never be forgotten. I wish you all constant success going forward. Thank you. Right. Let's get back to something we were mentioning in that Premier League wrap, and we were talking about earlier with Arsenal's pursuit of a striker, Michael. One of the clubs who are interested in Matheus Cunha, but they're not the only ones, are they? No,
there's a number of players you can just see we'll be talking about in the final week, in our new home for the final week in Battersea, which we're looking forward to, aren't we? But, Aston Villa, another club interested in Matheus Cunha. We've already reported Forest are ready to make a club record bid for Cunha. Nottingham Forest, by the way, Sky. Oh, this season, unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
But look, in terms of Villa, they need to remain compliant with PSR obligations. Cunha is not for sale, according to what Wolves have told us, but 2.5 years left on his contract. That'll fly by, won't it, Sky?
Well, it depends. I think the danger for clubs is if a player is happy at a club, but then other clubs come in for that player. Because Cunha, if he's not desperate to move, and at the moment he's playing really well, then he may just decide to sit on his contract. And then it becomes an issue for Wolves when they sell, how much they sell him for.
What we should say about Cunha here is that Wolves have actually got a contract offer on the table for him, a new contract on the table, which hasn't been signed. But given the position that they're in, they don't feel too much pressure because he's still got 2.5 years left to run. They've got to weigh various things up, don't they? If they get a big transfer fee for Matheus Cunha, which he would command in this transfer window, does that outweigh the potential relegation that they could suffer without him? Because you've only got 10 days to go. It's one thing selling Matheus Cunha and having all of that money in the bank. You're not going to have much time to replace someone of his quality, are you?
When agents are doing contracts, one of the things that you've got to do as an agent is that you've got to have foresight. Hindsight, foresight. And what I mean by foresight is you've got to have an amount of money that the player can go. You've got to have a buyout. So if you know that your player is going to excel or probably will excel, then you stick a buyer in there. Because if there was a buyer in his contract, he's gone. Because he's world class. And I think most clubs would want to sign him. But then when you say, people always talk about contracts and about why players are not signing a contract. I mean, contract has to be negotiated. And if both sides aren't happy, that contract ain't getting signed. So it's up to a club to identify who their stars are and to tie them down on long-term contracts. It's not up to the player and the agent. The club ties the player down, and they've got him for another 2.5 years. And trust me, if he wants to leave, that 2.5 years is a long time. But if he's happy, and he's happy to play for Wolves that have brought him to the fore, he's played in a club that was good for him to bring him to these heights. So now he's got a decision to make about his future, but he's world class. I think he can almost play for any club in the world.
Yeah, something tells me that if he doesn't get sold in this January transfer window, which Vitor Pereira, we must re-emphasise, has said he's not for sale, we don't need to let him go, I think Matheus Cunha could be a subject for the summer. Right, coming up next, we'll look ahead to the final week of the window and, as we have Sky Andrew here, reflect on one of the most controversial transfers the Premier League has ever seen. I wonder if you remember that one. Stay with us.
I'm happy at Spurs, I'm playing football at Spurs.
All the managers were desperate to keep him on the books.
The world was his oyster.
It seemed to be a big question, when will Sol sign a new contract?
What a header! What a goal!
What about your situation, Sol? Will you be staying at Tottenham?
I'm staying.
I mean, Barcelona chased him round the garden.
The negotiation methods of Sol Campbell and Sky Andrew just sit there.
We probably thought deep down that maybe come the end of the season he will re-sign and we'll give him a contract that's acceptable to him.
Did you demand this basic salary that Spurs have talked about of £130,000 to £140,000 a week to stay at the club?
No.
The news that every Spurs fan dreaded is official. Sol Campbell is wanted by Arsenal.
Most of our meetings were done after midnight, walking around my garden in Totteridge.
My decision was on ball, totally.
It came quite out of the blue.
I love theatre, so I wanted to make it pretty dramatic.
We've got no idea what was going on.
It's throwing off. I've seen Sol Campbell here.
I've done everything right.
To do what he did, I think, was like one of the most nastiest crimes you could commit in Premier League history.
My time at Arsenal was very successful.
The documentary is available on demand now, and Sol Campbell saying there that his time at Arsenal was very successful, and one of the men who was instrumental in helping him do that deal was his agent, Sky Andrew. Do you still feel the effects of that deal today? Do you get stopped in the street, harangued in the street?
Yeah, everyone's still talking about that deal. I think that, do you know Alan Sugar, yeah? When I look at him there, me and him had murders. But I'll tell you something about him is that, you know, he's a street fighter. He's a very straight person. And what I remember about talking to him is that I think he couldn't understand that why football in some areas was a little bit grey. You know, he was very black and white. And I've got big respect for him because afterwards he accepted that I grafted for my client and we get on well now, you know what I mean? I've got a decent relationship with him. I think that anyone that had not sort of dealt with the situation in the right, not that it worked out for him, but like I've got a lot of time for him. I've got a big respect for him because there are people in football that say something and do something else, but he was straight. So that's what I can say to him. And I know that at that time he was getting a lot of stick from the Spurs fans, but he spent money and he gave people a job to do a job, and that's how he saw it. He gave people a job to do a job and they either did it or they didn't. But let's just remember, yeah, nobody gets credit for honouring a contract. When you sign a contract, as a player, same with Alexander-Arnold at Liverpool, you sign a contract and you honour the contract, and your job is to conduct yourself in the right way and play football.
It's two-way.
And it's up to the club to come to you with an offer for you to sign it. When people talk about Alexander-Arnold's got a contract and he's not signing it, or why didn't Sol Campbell sign a contract, who are you going to blame? On the one side, you've got a club with all of these employees, chief executives and sporting directors. And then on the other hand, you've got a player and an agent. Most players sign contracts. They just sign one after another.
The agent of the player will say he's honouring his contract. The fans who are going to lose that player saying he'll run down his contract. But effectively, they're the same thing, aren't they?
No, but, you know, we have situations where clubs or fans want a player to go, even if they're under contract. So then they're like, why are you still here? Why aren't you going? So in my eyes, you know, people that honour their contract, they shouldn't be castigated because it's not the job of the player to negotiate on behalf of the club. It's down to the club to say to the player, let's talk, this contract, what about this contract? You can always do a deal with any player. I don't care if a player's got 6 months left on their contract and the club want to keep the player, the club can sit with the player and the agent and do a deal. There's always a deal that can be done.
Sky,
as a Spurs fan.
Like it's still strange looking at this.
God,
you know, honestly,
Jesus
like
Christ.
I mean, it is.
Has he really just bought that? Is he?
But
he got it made up today.
I was at that game, his first game back at White Hart Lane.
Yeah.
I've never known an atmosphere so vicious at that stadium. Even 2:15 when the players came out, it was full. They just wanted to boo Sol Campbell warming up. He actually played really well in that game.
Yeah.
Did you ever sit down with him and say, look, are you sure about this? Are you sure? Because obviously it worked out brilliantly for him in terms of trophies, and Arsenal were brilliant back then. But because of what happened after, the fact it's still getting talked about to this day.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an iconic move. But, you know, a job of an agent isn't to do what the agent wants to do. A lot of agents just represent themselves, right? This was purely about turning down the volume, getting all of the information. Look, if I tell you that Sol Campbell refused to speak to any clubs until late April, May, because he was adamant that he wanted to do the right thing by Spurs, speak to them, see if we could reach a resolution. I mean, it's ironic to me that anyone says anything bad about him because he honoured his contract, and I can tell you that I had the Bayern Munich's, Barcelona's, Real Madrid's, every club in the world wanted to speak to him, and I was the one telling them he's not speaking to anybody. I mean, the Arsenal thing happened really late, but players of today, a lot of them don't realise that they are being pushed into a situation. If you ask any top player, they would want to be out of contract to choose what they want to do. They may stay at the club. They may go to another club. But players of today, a lot of them are not getting the correct information. So what I did was, I said, right, turn the volume down, get you all of the information. Right, what do you want to do? How many players can honestly sit down and say that they were given the opportunity to do what they want to do? Some players are just stuck in contracts. Some players are getting advice and they're guided to do something that they don't really want to do. So, you know, let's put a lid on this. Sol Campbell honoured his contract. He waited till the last minute before he spoke to anybody. And he shouldn't be castigated for honour. The fans have got to say, what do we want from players? Do we want players to honour their contracts, or do we want players to break their contracts? Because I tell you, the players that break the contracts, everybody's on their case. Sometimes players go for 70, 80, 90 million and they still get booed.
Sky, in 10 seconds, are we seeing this move now that players aren't going to sign pre-contracts, they're just going to wait till the summer if they're out of contract to assess every option?
I mean, how many players have you seen sign a pre-contract with 6 months to go? I know Ramsey did it at Arsenal, and Arsenal, as classy club they are, they still played him the whole 6 months.
Sky, Andrew, it's been an absolute pleasure. Michael Bridge, you've been good as well. Coming up next, more on Kyle Walker's move from Manchester City to AC Milan. He's joined on loan until the end of the season with an option to buy. More next.